All right, today we're going to unpack a story about integrity that's, believe it or not, thousands of years old, but it feels like it could have been written just for us right now. It's got everything: a prophet, a nation on the brink, and a really simple tool that ends up revealing a pretty profound and, let's be honest, uncomfortable truth.
So just let those words sink in for a second. They come from the book of Amos, so yeah, they're ancient, they're a little bit mysterious. You've got a wall, a divine figure, and this simple tool. But what's so amazing is that in this tiny little vision, there's a whole moral framework, a blueprint, really, that is just as relevant to us today as it was back then.
Yeah, because when you strip it all away, that's what we're talking about here. It's an ancient tool, for sure, but it represents a test that never gets old. It's a test of our structure, our integrity, and at the end of the day, it's a test of our character.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the prophet's plumb line, then the wall of character, and this idea of an unbending standard. After that, we'll get into the question of sight, see how judgment begins within, and wrap it all up by asking, are we building straight or just high? Let's dive in.
All right, Section 1, a prophet's plumb line. So, to really get what this vision is all about, you've got to understand the guy who saw it and, the world he was living in.
So, first off, who is this Amos guy? Well, he wasn't some elite priest from the capital. The text tells us he was a working man, a shepherd. And his message, it wasn't some complicated mystical thing. It was a straight-up call for moral accountability. See, the nation of Israel looked like it was doing great, but underneath, things were rotting. So the response from on high wasn't just immediate punishment, it was measurement. And that's the key takeaway here. Before there's any kind of judgment, there has to be an evaluation. You have to see where you stand.
And that whole idea of measurement leads us right into our next big metaphor, the wall of character. This is all about that clash between how things look and how they really are.
If you were just looking from the outside, Israel looked fantastic. They were prosperous, they were religious, it was all very impressive. But on the inside, totally different story. Justice was being ignored, truth was being compromised, the whole structure was just fundamentally unsound. And that is exactly what the plumb line is for. It's there to expose that dangerous gap between appearances and reality.
And this is where this ancient story becomes super personal, right? The wall, that's not just a bunch of stones. That's your character. The work you put into it, that's your life's work. And the standard it's being measured against, that's your moral consistency. Think about it. A wall can be incredibly tall and look really impressive. But if it's not true, if it's not perfectly straight, it's going to fail. And the lesson here is that the exact same thing is true for us.
Okay, so we've got the wall. Now let's zoom in on the tool itself. Let's talk about the unbending standard of the plumb line.
So what even is a plumb line? It's maybe one of these simplest, oldest tools you can imagine. Seriously, it's just a weight on a string, but its power is immense. It just uses gravity, right? An undeniable force to show you what is absolutely, perfectly vertical. And here's the kicker. It doesn't care about your opinion. It doesn't care about what's convenient or about your excuses. Its power is that it's just purely objective.
And that's the powerful lesson of the plumb line, isn't it? It teaches us that some truths, they're just not relative. They're objective. They don't bend. And a standard like this isn't there to just make us feel bad about our flaws. No, it's there to show us where we're deviating from what's true, so that we actually have a chance to see it, and maybe, just maybe, correct it.
Okay, and this all leads up to the big turning point in the story. It's just a simple question, but it forces this powerful moment of recognition. The question is put right to the prophet, Amos. What do you see? And it sounds so simple, right? But it's not just about, oh, what's that thing over there? It's about being willing to really see and acknowledge the standard for what it is. And the answer he gives is just as simple, just as direct. A plumb line. That's it. No excuses, no trying to explain why the wall might be a little crooked, no extra details. Just a plain, honest recognition of the truth. And this is so important. That question wasn't asked for God's benefit. It was for ours. It's a wake-up call for our own moral vision. And that's the real challenge for us, isn't it? When we're shown an objective standard, are we willing to see where we don't measure up? And once you have that moment of recognition, you realize this isn't about some outside force coming in to judge you. No, this is an internal test. Judgment, in this story, starts from the inside.
The text actually says the plumb line will be set in the midst of the people, and that phrase is everything.
This isn't about comparing yourself to your neighbor or your country to another country. It's about an internal alignment. The standard gets applied right to your heart, to your conscience, to your actions every single day. It's in that gap between what we say we believe and what we actually do. That's where the real work happens.
You know, the source material just nails it with this line. The most important work is internal. Real, genuine character isn't something you build for other people to see. It's built from the inside out, in those moments when nobody else is even looking.
And all of this leads us to the final, kind of sobering conclusion of the whole lesson. It's the point where we have to ask ourselves if what we're building is straight or just high. And it's where the excuses run out.
So that last line in the passage, I will not pass by them anymore, that doesn't necessarily mean instant destruction. It's something much deeper. It means the end of second chances, the end of warnings, the end of indulgence. Once you've been shown the standard, once you know what's right, you're accountable. Gaining knowledge and skill brings more responsibility, not more privilege. You just can't pretend you don't know the wall is crooked anymore.
So let's pull all these threads together. This chart basically sums it all up. The wall built true, that's your character, formed by discipline. The plumb line, that's subjective truth. That question, what do you see? That's about waking up your own moral awareness. And the measurement itself leads to self-examination. And finally, the end of excuses becomes accountability. It's a perfect roadmap for looking inward.
And so, that leaves us with the final, timeless question. The one this ancient story is really asking every single one of us. It's not about how impressive your life looks from the outside. It's not about the height of the wall. It's about the integrity of the work itself. So the question for you to think about is this. Are you building straight, or are you just building high?